Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. Well, Graham, I always like it when we get a recommendation. We were talking a few weeks ago to Gio Marcus, and Gio recommended us today's guest.
Yeah, I love Gio. I think she's absolutely brilliant. And, you know, the world that she's in is she's surrounded by really, really talented people. And she said, but I've got somebody in my circle who's not that talented. But it might be a big help if you bring her onto the podcast. But no, she didn't say that at all. Actually, she said that this lady is absolutely amazing. And her name is Angie Colee.
She didn't tell me I'd be signing up for a comedy podcast, though.
No, well, we like to have fun, but also get to a point. But we never do get to the point. So let's just have some fun in the meantime. I love that thing right next to your head there. It says, "You got this."
Mm-hmm.
Is that a light? Is that a light?
It is, but I don't have it's not got a long enough cord right now to plug in. So now I've just got it displayed as a sign. And it's hot pink, which isn't really my flavor. So I'm going to find a way to paint it. But I love that. It was a Christmas gift from my stepmother, who knows me very well. And it just speaks to everything I believe. You got this.
She definitely knows you. And I've seen your website and we'll talk about that in a minute. But basically, where do you hail from?
I'm originally from the San Antonio area of Texas. So I know you can't tell from my accent, which kind of comes out here and there.
You can't. No. There's no way that you're Texan. But I have to say that I've been into San Antonio. It's a lovely city. But you're a little bit further north of Houston nowadays.
Yes, I am currently in Houston, finishing up my book, Permission to Kick Ass, which is exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
So no, what I heard then was Permission to Kick Ass.
Yep. That's the name of the book and my show.
Right. Okay. So we'll get into that, because if you're writing a book, it's got to be serious stuff. I mean, is it going to be a long one that we're all going to stop reading after the first chapter?
Probably. Yeah. I don't know when to shut up when it comes to the written word. And I tell stories with lots of asides, like most ADHD people, but
you're not.
I did manage to cut 40,000 words. So fingers crossed.
Wow. 40,000. That's a lot. I mean, I don't know about you, Kevin, but I don't think I'll ever get round to writing a book.
I don't know, 40,000 words sounds a lot to me, Graham. I've still got the book on the back burner. Yeah. One day it'll get somewhere near written, but that's impressive. 40,000 words. So Permission to Kick Ass.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what's it really about?
It's everything that I wish I had known about operating a creative service business before I started, because it was a long, hard journey for me and fraught with a lot of, I'm a creative person. I don't have business skills. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm never going to figure this out. And since I first started and failed, my first freelancing bout was a miserable failure. I had no idea what I was doing, either on the writing side or the business side. I decided to take a job to get good at the writing side, get paid to learn, right? Yeah. That's a great strategy. Why not? And then I invested some of that training in getting better at the business side of things and realized it's a skill set. Anybody can learn it. And I just needed it broken down in a different way that made it not seem like everybody over here with the suit and ties got it right, and me over here with my bright red hair and my swearing and my piercings and tattoos has it wrong.
Do you know, it's funny because we must have met because when we were on this Dixie Dude Ranch and we were all on horseback, it was the first time in my life that I'd heard somebody, because they must have been listening to me, saying potty mouth. And I which basically means that you let the odd bit of industrial language come out, which I have been known. So basically, you let the odd bit of industrial language come out, don't you?
Yes. Sometimes the F-bomb is just the right word.
Yeah. But the thing is, you're such an appealing character. You do. I mean, we should see more of that red hair. I mean, is it dyed or is it a natural color? Are you like a strawberry blonde?
It's super bright red.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I'm trying to see if you can get it in the light here, but it's due for a refresh, at which case it'll really just be blindingly red. I love it.
I love it. Oh, we did have, not that long ago, I went to a conference in Russell Brunson thing in Orlando, and we met a hairdresser. Well, I met a hairdresser. She subsequently came back onto the podcast. She can do it for you.
A long way to travel to get your hair done.
Yeah, well, she's in Canada, but so anyway, by and by.
But go across an international border for a haircut.
Yeah, well, you don't want to go to a country that's led by Fidel Castro's son, do you? Let's face it. But let's leave that there for a moment. Kevin's wondering what am I on about? But
this is another of these ridiculous fake news podcasts from the United States.
No, it's true. I mean, it's true, and he's got to deny. He's got to prove that he's not. So basically, when it comes to the work that you do day in, day out, then Angie, what is it? What do you do?
I work with entrepreneurs on their leadership and communication skills. So I am switching from marketing and copywriting, which I've done for 13 years. And when I got to the point that I was running creative teams for big name marketers and business leaders, I started to realize that my passion had shifted and that there were a lot of people, especially entering freelance, like creatives, we're a little bit sensitive, right? And to create something out of thin air, you kind of have to put a little bit of yourself in it. And that makes feedback and perceived rejection and hard conversations especially difficult because it feels very much like a personal attack. So I made it my mission to just help entrepreneurs, especially creative people, communicate better, lead better, feel more confident in their own skill set. And that's the mission we are on.
So somebody comes to you, but it's a bit like they're running a business maybe, but maybe not optimized. And they say, Angie, what am I going to do? I mean, and then you literally take over, or you sort of say, let's have a conversation. How does it actually work?
We have a conversation to identify what the true source of the problem is, because often we come to the table thinking that one area is the source of the struggle or that one solution is the way that we need to go. And when we unpack that, we realize that there's something that's underneath that. So I might come to this thinking that maybe my team member is a problematic team member and I need to figure out how to fire them gently without destroying their soul, and discover that, well, I didn't really set them up for success from the beginning. I didn't have a training process. I haven't really let them know my expectations along the way. And I haven't been great at communicating them since I brought them on board. So do I need to fire them? Can I go back into this and maybe salvage this by working with them a little bit more directly? So like I help people uncover, is the thing that you're thinking really the problem, or is there something underneath that? And let's figure out how to address that.
That's a real skill, isn't it, Kevin?
Yeah. It's one of those things that I think in terms of working with other people, nobody shows up at work to do a bad job.
No.
When the results aren't there, what's going on? It's either there's something going on in their life that's getting in the way, or as their manager or taskmaster or whatever, you have not told them in sufficient detail what you want.
Yes. I was watching an episode. I don't know if you ever heard of that show, Undercover Boss. But I watched a compilation recently where the CEOs of these big companies go to like a local branch and start working undercover. Yeah. And I saw this compilation recently where the bosses all worked with a manager who was on a little bit of a power trip. And this person came in and was like, I'm going to teach you one and you got to get it done. And they were super tough. And I was actually really, really happy at the end when the CEOs revealed who they were and then offered those people additional leadership training and support, because somebody coming in like that as a manager doesn't really know what a manager does. They're just acting on what they think a boss does. And in their experience, a boss is tough. A boss is demanding. A boss rides you and is responsible for all of these things happening. And they don't understand that there's a difference between bossing people around and leading them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We're all humans, aren't we? I mean, and at the end of the day, I think you have to have that kind of respect for other people's opinions. And
yes,
I mentioned where my wife is today, and I was just going to say that the one piece of advice I gave was all you have to do in the work that you're doing today is just to listen to other people. And we don't have to go into what she's doing, but basically the important thing is that everybody's got a point of view, and as opposed to sort of overriding that, listen to it. And I suppose that's what we have a podcast for, to listen to, in this case, you, Angie.
I feel very, very honored. But I mean, that's the truth of it. If we can learn to not disregard our own instinct to respond, but at least put it on pause enough to take in what somebody else is saying. It doesn't mean that you agree. It doesn't mean that they're right and you're wrong, or vice versa. It just means that you're leaving the door open for something even better than you think is right to emerge. And that took me a long time to learn on my leadership journey, because the very first time when I was still corporate in-house that I became a senior copywriter, and I lobbied hard for this. I was so young and ambitious. Promote me. I want senior. Tell me what I got to do to get there. I'm going for it. So I finally land this promotion, and we bring a new writer onto the team. And my copy chief, my boss, tells me, okay, I'm going to give you your first project. Your first project is going to be working directly with this junior writer to help bring them up to speed on this particular project. And bless him, because we all need people in our lives that can function as what I call a loving mirror and reflect the truth back at us. This poor writer, I love them to death, was patiently putting up with me, basically watching over their shoulders, telling them how Angie would solve this problem. And like, no, I don't agree with this word choice. If you think about it like I would think about it, let's walk back and do this all over again. And my boss pulled me aside and he did that. So Angie, could you join me in my office, please? Could you shut the door, please? And I was like, here we go. Oh, goodness. What am I in for? And he goes, there's more than one way to solve any problem. And yours, while it may work, may not be the only one that works, and it may not be the one that works best. And we're never going to see what the writer is capable of doing if you don't let them do it their own way and just see if their solution might work too. And that was really, I think, the spark of what set me off on this journey and helped me to realize that, yeah, especially in creative businesses, ideas get better when you expose them to the light of day and to other people, and then they bounce around and they amplify and they transform into something great. So yeah, my way's not the only way.
So that was probably one of the best meetings you've had in corporate.
Oh yes, he is one of the best mentors and bosses that I could have ever hoped for. He saw the potential in me and wasn't deterred by the fact that I was sassy and full of attitude. And, in my 20s, I knew everything. Oh, to be that young again and know everything.
I mean, Kevin does know everything. I mean, he's just one of those people.
Oh, thank you, Graham. You finally realized that.
Did it come full circle? You knew everything in your teens, and then you realized you knew nothing, and now you know everything again. Is that what I can look forward to?
Probably, yeah. It's something. then somebody comes along and invents something completely new, like artificial intelligence. You realize you know nothing all over again.
No, but just keeping about Angie for the minute, Kevin. You know some of these names. You've worked with and for companies like Jeff Walker's product launch formula.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Lowe's, Copy Chief. I don't know Orza Media, but I do know Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad brand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking a league there, aren't we?
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
So you worked for them, and did you have to bribe them? I mean,
no.
Did they see something in you?
Well, and I mean, this is the perk of learning how to get good at peopling, as I call it, because when I started to work with Jeff Walker, it was after I left that corporate job. That corporate job was very toxic, by the way. And, I had to get out, but it helped me learn and become who I am. So I'm grateful for it. So I leave this job and I'm still feeling kind of iffy about my skills, but I'm plugged into this network of copywriters, one of whom is consulting with Jeff Walker. She's helping him create a voice guide and an onboarding system, because he had the same problem we talked about earlier, that he kept bringing on copywriters and they weren't getting what he was trying to say for whatever reason. And instead of going, copywriters suck on the whole, we don't need any of them, I'm just going to do it myself, he realized there's probably something that I could be doing better to set these people up for success. So I was the grand experiment on Jeff Walker's team. I was brought in to test this new onboarding process, this new voice guide, this new training system that my friend Abby Woodcock had created for him. And so they joked that I was the copywriter that made it, because I wound up working with him for about 4 years and then running his team and training the additional copywriters that came on.
So what is it?
It was fantastic.
What was it that you found out about Jeff's, your colleague's system that Jeff was employing? What was it that you found out that worked? Because presumably you were able to sort of meld it a little bit, so it wasn't all great, but you found out to work it. What was it that you did?
Yeah. I think it was a combination of three things. One was that breaking the voice down in a measurable and understandable way. So a lot of folks that are bringing on a copywriter to function as their voice have never sat back and thought analytically about how they present themselves, what they would and wouldn't say, language that's forbidden, that they just don't ever want to come out of anybody in their company, language that's always encouraged, right? They've never broken this down. So there's that. There's avoiding the info dump, because I think a lot of folks, since they've never worked with a writer, they've never trained a writer, they don't know how to get into that mode, right? They just go, here's everything I've ever written. Let me know if you need help. Right? So this process broke it down into like, okay, day one, here's the overview of our company, how we think, here's a welcome video from Jet. Like, it was very systematic onboarding over the course of about 3 weeks with a task a day to help bring you on board. And tied in with that was the expectation of, we don't expect you on day one or even in the first 30 days to have mastered this. No. We know that this is going to be a step-by-step journey. And then the third process was that Jeff and I worked very closely for the better part of 9 months, where everything that I wrote, that was coming from him, because I was writing as Jeff Walker. Okay. He and I were talking about it, and he was saying, this is how I would write this, and here's why I think that way. And that got me to the point where I could turn off Angie, so to speak, and I could turn on my internal Jeff and go, no, he wouldn't say it this way. He would say it this way. And by the time we got through about 9 months of working together, he was very confident in, everything that I turned out would be 80 to 90% there. And he'd only have to do the littlest bit of editing unless we had a miscommunication somewhere. So it was really a great learning experience.
Wow. It does sound a little bit like AI now, but you were the human form of it, weren't you, in a sense? Mm-hmm. You kind of got into the mind but we shouldn't make this all about AI, because it's not about that, because the beauty of this is that you did it. And mm-hmm. There's something about the brain that you've got that enabled you to sort of match the kinds of, I don't know, this is what Jeff would have said, rather this is not what Jeff would have said. Mm-hmm. Is there an example of, or something that comes to mind that can explain that?
Well, I don't know. It sounds kind of goofy to me, but I basically had, and maybe this is a creative thing, maybe it's just the way my brain works in particular, but I used to joke with people that I had an internal Jeff. And it was most obvious to people when we were at live events. He does those big, 1,000-person Tony Robbins style events with a lot of high energy. And we would be on site helping with that, but we would still have to write things and adjust marketing while we're on site. And he'd be up on stage saying something, and I'd be working on something at the back table, and I'd have to put on my headphones with some instrumental music, and people would laugh. I'm like, no, I got to block out the Jeff on stage so I can hear the Jeff in my head. And that's what would happen. I would read a draft and I could hear who wrote it. And it's so interesting because as I brought on writers, Chris Orzechowski, who runs Orzi Media, was one of the writers, and he left to start his own company, his own agency. And I could hear when it switched from Jeff to Angie, or Jeff to Chris, or Jeff to Candace. Like I could hear in my voice in my head, the different word choices of the different writers, and would make the decision to edit this out or let this stay in. I used to tell the writers that I don't care about you getting to 100%, because if each of us gets to about 90%, that's what makes the three of us writing together sound like this dimensional, complex human being instead of just a flat, persona.
Wow. I mean, that's a super talent, Kevin, don't you think?
That is just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. But she's not making it up, Kevin. I mean, she's not a liar.
No. That to me is a real skill about copywriting.
It is, isn't it?
Copywriting, number one, is how do I use the right words and phrases in order to get this brand across in somebody's brain? Mm-hmm. Then to layer on top of that and make it sound like Jeff Walker or similar on top of all of that and put it across. That to me is phenomenal, Graham.
Yeah, one of the things that you've said on your website is my superpower is finding hidden opportunities in your people, profits, or processes that can be implemented fast. Now, that sounds like a big claim. You call it a superpower, but it's hidden. First of all, the active word there is hidden opportunities. So that's, you can see it, but the guy who's running the business or the person who's running the business can't.
Yes. Isn't that the case though? We're often too close to it to see the opportunities that somebody with a fresh brain can spot. And so, like, for instance, when I went to work with Jeff on his team, and Jeff is arguably an expert at direct response marketing. Sure. He has built this company up from nothing without the business background and experience. Like he has a finance degree, but he figured it out as he went and built this whole system that he wound up teaching. If you have been through a launch funnel recently, it is because of Jeff Walker. He's a very smart man. He didn't have an abandoned cart sequence that triggered after his launches or after he had somebody go through a sales process. And that was something that my team and I implemented for the first time. And that's a sequence of, I think it wound up being 3 emails. We started with 5, but we cut it down to 3. Very simple emails that run on an automation every time somebody visits a checkout page but doesn't complete their order. And that alone saved 60 sales its first launch at $2,000 a sale.
Wow.
That email sequence of 3 short emails is a multi-million-dollar asset.
But he just
after every launch.
He just hadn't built it in to his process. And this is the Jeff Walker product launch formula, which I've got a book on the shelf that's of that name.
Yeah. A book on my Kindle of that name.
Yeah.
If you have the second edition, I'm in the credits, in the acknowledgements.
Oh, I only got the first edition. If I'd have known that you were in the second, I'd have kept the first anyway. But no. Seriously though, you've obviously worked for some pretty special people. But that the fact that you know Gio and the fact that Gio's recommended you, clearly you two have got on. And I can see why people are magnetically attracted to you. Because there's something in what you can do. Would you say that you're famous?
No, I don't think so.
In your own environment?
Maybe niche famous. Because I do remember I did a podcast with my friend Kevin Rogers. I don't know if you know of him. He runs that community copy chief that I mentioned that I joined. And that was how I got connected with Jeff. I talked with Kevin about the first time I was on one of his stages. And then when I got down, I got mobbed and was supremely uncomfortable. And so he and I did a podcast about how to go to conferences and how to present yourself, especially when you want to talk to somebody that you admire, somebody that said something on stage that inspired you, because that whole experience made me realize how I had been that person in the past when I went to a conference and I went, "Oh my God, you're so amazing." That's not really a conversation starter though. It's like, yes, I am amazing. I have a 72-page PowerPoint presentation. Let's talk about it. Like, come up to somebody and say, "I thought what you said was really interesting. Have you ever considered this?" Or "I have a question about that," and make it into a conversation, because there are some people that love being showered with praise. That's great. And yes, to a certain extent, I love being showered with praise. Tell me I'm awesome. But when I get hit with 100 people saying I'm awesome all at the same time, something in me shuts down and doesn't know what to say and doesn't know how to react. And I was very grateful that I had friends at that point that could tell that I was very deer in the headlights and didn't know what to do. And they literally grabbed me and shoved me into an Uber and we went somewhere.
Do you realize what you've just done?
What?
For all attendees of events who get enthused, you've just helped them enormously by not doing this thing and replacing it with that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, every person that I know that puts themselves out there into the spotlight, that has a mission, wants to know that they've had an impact on your life for the better. They absolutely do want to hear that they had some sort of result, but make it something beyond, "Oh my God, you're amazing. I've been the biggest fan forever." Right? Come to them and say, "I took your program and I got this result. And I'm just so grateful to be able to be here and talking to you." Or, like I said, "I heard you on stage and I had a question about this thing. If you've got a few minutes," treat them like a human being. And that actually kind of circles back to how I got the Jeff Walker role, because it's a little bit blasphemous, but as long as I was in internet marketing, I didn't actually know who he was when I got invited to try for this role.
Yeah.
And I think that went a long way, because I didn't get so in my head that I was psyched out about, like, "Oh my God, it's a big name." And I was able to see that, working with Robert Kiyosaki's team, working with Jeff Walker, working with anybody that has a big name is just working with a person. They're a person at the end of the day. Yeah. They know a lot. They have a lot of experience. Does that make them perfect? No. So just be a person.
You know what? We could cut the podcast and it'd be one of the best ever because of that piece of advice. It wouldn't be, but I'm only saying that just to make you feel a little bit better. That's all. But I'm no, seriously.
It's a comedy show. It's a flattery show. I'm here for it.
Well, it's the old classic. You build them up and then you take them down really quickly, don't you? It's the old. I won't go into that. Right. So, but looking at your website, it's an amazingly black and white thing. It's black and white and red all over. So, it's like printing presses. But basically, big blobs of red everywhere. What made you, shall we say, create this permission to kick ass website and use so much red?
That was really just my web guy. I didn't have a designer at the time. And at some points I will probably get an overhaul of the brands, but it has worked so far. People have commented before on the red and how it stands out, and it seems to be really attention getting in that way. So just haven't had the need to rebrand and make it look different lately. So all credit to my web guy, Dave Toomey, who's over in the UK as well.
Wow. Well, I have to say it does stand out, and well done to him. He's probably a Man United fan though, Kevin. I can't, if he's over.
So wrong shade of red though, Graham. It's more like a claret on a West Ham shirt.
No, no. Anyway, but there's a lovely photo of you, I just like the look of it. So just for those people who are still figuring out where we are. permissiontoKickAss.com. And if you go there, then you'll find out more about Angie Colee. And the thing about you, Angie, is that once you kind of get to know you, and you've got a lot of you've got podcast material on there, you've got other media, etc. You've got a lot of stuff going and a lot of experience. Once somebody is in your sort of realm, what would they say about you after that moment? What is it that they like particularly about you? And don't be modest.
That's a good one. And that's a challenge for me because I am learning to accept praise and not reject it growing up a Southern woman. I just had a round of initial feedback from my early readers since the book is coming in December. And so I've had folks say, this is like a loving slap of truth. This is Angie is no nonsense and sees the best in you and helps you to step forward and realize that you are the best at what you do. That I really just don't fluff people up. I don't do the hype very well, but I still am your biggest cheerleader and will help you believe in yourself.
You like people, don't you?
Yeah, I really do.
No,
I think that there's something special about every human on this earth, and that all we have to do is find it.
And I think you obviously have this talent to be able to go into that sweet spot, as you've got it on your website there, but into that sweet spot within a person and figure out how I can sort of alter the dials a little bit to make their lives that much better. And at the end of it, they like you for it. And like you said, a slap. You give them a bit of a metaphorical slap or a physical slap? Or do you actually hit your clients as well?
No, I don't physically slap, but I have told people, oh, that felt like a gut punch when I say something to them. And I want to clarify, it's not me doing the work. The people that work with me already have the answers inside them, and it's just been clouded by years of shiny object syndrome and insecurity and, maybe working with people who told them there's one way to do things and then everything got confused. But I would say that my specialty is not necessarily telling people what to do or turning the knobs. It's helping them get quiet and figure out what they wanted to do in the first place so that they can figure out how to listen to their own intuition and not everybody else's messages.
That's interesting. So that's interesting that you're not turning the dials as such, but you're allowing the person that you're helping. Is that coaching or is that mentoring? I'm not quite sure.
I think it's a little bit of both. because I will give somebody strategies and tactics if they need it, but not until I've heard that this is where you really need to go. And I think that ties into what we talked about at the beginning. There's always something underneath the surface under what we think the problem really is, or the challenge really is. And once we can get to that real challenge and start to work toward finding a solution for that, a lot of the other problems seem to resolve themselves because they were related to that core issue.
There's a very, very simple formula that I think an awful lot of coaching and also leadership ought to be based around. It's P equals P minus I. Okay.
Tell me more.
Performance equals potential minus interference.
Ooh.
Your job as the leader comes back to that example you're giving about the boss back down on the shop floor and observing somebody who's bossing people around. No. Your role as a boss is remove the interference that stops your people realizing their potential. And I think it's the same with a coach. Your job is to get rid of the interference.
Well, that's quite a. It's quite. I think I've come across that formula before. You might have mentioned it before, or I might have seen it before, Kevin. But it's a really good one.
That's the first time I heard that. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it'll go in your book now. But don't mention Kevin. just put it in as if you've thought of it. But Kevin's probably got it from somebody else, haven't you, Kevin?
Of course I have. You can do an internet search and get loads on it.
Right.
I did a whole podcast on that with one of our Grow CFO mentors.
All right. Okay. That's cool.
But look, how do you apply that to the team in the workplace?
I wanted to dig into the types of clients that you really want. So somebody's listening to this podcast and they've heard you. They've heard about the copy. They've heard about you working with Jeff Walker. They've heard the instinctive sort of, I've spotted something that Jeff's missed, which is, I mean, that's pretty special. I mean, if I went to work for Dan Kennedy for a few weeks, I don't think I'd be spotting that much that he's not already thought of, and that would be the sort of thing that's the equivalent. But for you, that is awesome work. Now, who is it that you really want to work with going forward?
I want to work with creative service providers, with entrepreneurs, with people who have reached around the $500,000 level. They're in that messy growth stage where they know that they can't continue to keep doing everything themselves, but the idea of hiring, or maybe they have a small team and they don't know what to do to get these people to perform and do what they need to do. Everything is just in danger of collapsing because there's just too much. Those are the folks that I like working with the most, because I can often help them simplify, help them delegate, help them figure out what they need to do to keep moving forward, if that's even what they want to do. Because some people get in their heads that, I need to build $1 million business, when really they would be happy with a $500,000 business that doesn't take up all of their time. Different things for different people.
Yeah.
But if you spot that for them, then it's going to help them. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it helps them get clear on what they want. And I think it's so easy, especially in business, to get attached to these outside idea interference, as you mentioned, Kevin, and work really, really hard toward that goal. And then when you get there, there's just this big letdown. Like, there's one part of you that wants to celebrate. Yay, I did it. I didn't even know I could do it. I'm so happy. Crap. Now what? There's life after this. I have to keep going. And then there's a little bit of disappointment associated with such a big win. And it's funny because I don't think a whole lot of people outside of entrepreneurship get that feeling. Jeff used to make a joke about how his program, like his launch club program, his masterminds, were the only people that understood. And in the real world, most people didn't understand the fact that I could be disappointed by a $999,000 launch.
Yeah.
But it was so close. It was so close to $1 million. It was so close. Yeah.
But I think some people have the kind of level of ambition that makes the eyes water a little bit. And but having said that, I mean, I would be over the moon with with that. But
Me
having
too.
said that, but if it was only I'd have probably thrown that extra few quid in myself just to see it over.
Yeah.
But or ask Kevin to do it and then refunded him the following week. But I think that's probably it. But one of the things you say in your who I work best with is that you talked about the real path to leadership and excellence involves embracing your strengths and your quirks.
Mm-hmm.
So, given that Kevin's got lots of quirks, very few strengths, I mean, how are you going to cope with that?
I think it's really about showing other people that you're human too, and that a mistake most of us make, that I've made myself, is equating leadership with some sort of perfection or some sort of moralistic superiority that, like, I'm to be deferred to, when that's not necessarily the case. I may have a blind spot. I may be so focused on one area that I'm very, ignorance, not quite the right word, but like I'm just unaware of what's happening over here. And having people around you to kind of reflect that full picture back, it really, really just helps. It's interesting to me how I talk about most people can only really see what's in front of them. And I need to have this made into a graphic someday, but I love it. I've shown people kind of a squared off drawing and asked them how many people are in this room, and they go 0. And then I turn to the next page and I show them that it's a T-shaped hallway and there are people standing off in both wings. And I said, now how many people are in the room? And they were able to give me an answer. And I said, so you never really see the full picture. You can only see what you see. And that's why it's important to get out of your own head, to surround yourself with people that you trust, that maybe you even perceive are a little bit smarter than you, to challenge you to step up, right? I don't ever want to be, it's corny by now, but I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. That means I'm in the wrong room.
No, I don't know why Kevin puts up with me, because I'm definitely not as smarter than him. But I mean, he comes into this room every damn time, don't you, Kevin? Knowing that you're smarter.
But now going back to strengths, I'm minded of something. If you go way back in our back catalogue, Graham, actually podcast number 2.
Oh, Strengths Finder. Yeah, right.
Strengths Finder. No.
Yeah.
I just did that recently. It was fascinating.
Yeah, wow. Absolutely fascinating. Everybody has got their top 5 strengths.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you do with those top 5 strengths. We're all different.
And you can use those strengths to prop up other strengths. I think that was the biggest eye opener for me. So I recently, and I mean, I'm a coach and I hired a coach to help me out. Her name is Marianne Gramig and she is fantastic. She took me through the Strengths Finder. We did a breakdown of my top 5. And I am very high on activator, which is transforms ideas into reality. And I'm very high on strategy.
Right.
And she was showing me how, and I'm very low, incidentally, on consistency and discipline. And I told her that's really interesting because in certain areas I can be very disciplined, like producing my own podcast. Yeah. It is a whole system that is pretty buttoned down from start to finish. And she goes, that's your strategic and activator minds helping you make consistency and discipline possible. And I was like, I like this. I like having strengths that help other areas that aren't necessarily weaknesses, but I'm not as strong on. That's a much better framing to me than strengths and weaknesses.
Well, Kevin is a relator, and that's for sure. He's a learner, definitely. There isn't a shiny object he doesn't know about. It's rare. He's the arranger, definitely. We would never have done this podcast on my skills alone. He just makes things happen. He's an achiever and he's analytical. You've seen that today. Some of those are today. I'm a bit like you in a sense that I'm an activator first and then futuristic and strategic, an intellectual thinker and an ideas man. Now, I actually cheated. I just like those better than the rest. So those are the ones I put down. So, but I think they might be fairly accurate in fairness.
Well, the interesting thing is, Graham, you take any team and you take strengths across the team, and that's where the magic happens.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
You and I, probably one of the reasons this podcast works is that our strengths are different.
Yeah, they're very different.
And now, Angie's talking about going through strengths with a coach. Well, one of our Grow CFO mentors is a Strengths Finder coach. And he took both Dan and I through that. and how we work together and how we could best split things up according to where our particular strengths lie. And doing that piece of work was absolutely get my tongue twisted here. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's great. And I mean, it's interesting because I learned about Clifton Strengths before I took the assessments. And I think I did the same thing, Graham, where I picked what I thought was the top. I don't think I ever would have picked Activator as my top. So it was really insightful. And then, of course, when I read about it, and what I love about it is it shows the potential blind spots of each strength too.
Yeah, sure.
And I was just relating to everything in that report going, so it makes so much sense now.
But that must help you when you're, shall we say, unearthing things with clients. So I mean, I'm not saying that you have to base your business on StrengthsFinder, but basically this idea of seeing things that they might not do. But one of the things that it occurs to me is that you are a businesswoman, and you can see things that other people, and particularly with your strengths, you can see things that maybe are not there. But because you have an awareness of people, you kind of dig out their strengths as well in a way. It's quite a powerful combination for somebody in the creative arts there.
Thank you. And it's funny because it's taken me a while to kind of piece together how everything has come to this point in time. But I don't think that there are really any mistakes or accidents, because I went back to school to get my master's degree many years ago, graduated in 2010 with a Master of Entertainment Industry Management from Carnegie Mellon University. Wow. And that was specifically designed to be a hybrid creative business degree. They wanted to bridge the gap in LA in the entertainment industry between the people that were going, it's show business, not show art, and the people that were going, but without the art, you don't have a business. Like, come on now. And I wouldn't say, granted, while we're recording this, there's a big strike going on. So that hasn't resolved itself necessarily, but I wouldn't have foreseen when I went back to school for that where I am now. I just had to take the steps and trust that everything would make sense someday. Like, this feels good for now. And I'm going to have, the people in my corner and the space and my own brain power to figure out what this means and keep moving forward. And it's all come together fabulously, even though I didn't expect this.
I don't know about you, Kevin, but Angie is you feel bigger inside somehow, that your heart is expanding a little bit, and it's probably because she's giving me a bit of an heart attack. Maybe that's it. But there is something overwhelming that you get. You get a sense of belief that there's a future. I don't know about. Is that something that you're seeing, Kevin?
Yeah, and there's something larger than life there, I have to say.
There is.
Fantastic subjects today.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's been, honestly, Angie, I'm so grateful to Gio for pointing you in our direction, because, I mean, you are exactly the oddly enough, we have given my views about certain things American, we have quite an interest in a lot of people in the sort of west coast of America, which you'd think wouldn't necessarily follow my views. But having said that, we do have a lot of listeners in America, Kevin.
We do. We've actually got more listeners in America than we've got in the UK.
Well, it's because we love Americans, and some of them, and so basically, that's probably why we have a listenership.
That goes for any country, though, Graham. We don't.
Well, that's true.
In our own country.
Well, that's true as well. So we don't like Geordies. No, we do like Geordies. No, I mean
Manchester United supporters we don't like.
Yeah, all right, okay. So basically, then it's been a really enjoyable podcast with you, Angie, and I want to thank you for joining us today on the Next 100 Days podcast.
Wow, we covered a lot of ground there, Graham.
Angie Colee was this introduction from Gio Marcus, and we really appreciated Gio for bringing her into our lives, because what an interesting person.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go across and maybe listen to a few of her podcasts, actually. And now that I look at that website, I realise I've made a mistake about the Manchester United Red. Definitely on permissiontoKickass.com. It is Manchester United Red. I was still on angiecolee.com, which is definitely
right.
Burnley and West Ham Claret.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I was a bit. It was the permission to kick ass.com that I was talking about. But I have to say that I think her style is very. It's almost confrontational, but it's with almost like a humor to it as well.
Yeah,
not unlike ours a little bit, but basically it's a sort of. She can get into the impressive thing. She goes to Jeff Walker, works with him, and comes out with something that is missing. Yeah. And it's not a little thing, is it?
No. But Graham, that's so true about so many businesses. You're too close to the business to see the obvious sometimes.
Yeah. And he's a super smart guy. I mean, it'd be great having him on the podcast at some stage in the future. But he's still approachable. From my point of view, I think she gave us a perfect answer as to how you actually prevent yourself from gushing in the company of somebody that's interesting.
Big names. They're only people. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know it is when you meet, I don't know, somebody that you're in awe of, Marcelo Bielsa or so one of your football team or something like that, or somebody that's an actor.
Yeah, like the day I bumped into Kevin Keegan on the train going to London.
Well, I mean, and was he collecting tickets? Because I think he's fallen quite a long way, hasn't he?
Well, that was back in the day. He was at that stage. I think he was managing Fulham.
Oh, right. Okay, fair enough.
Still living in the Northeast.
Oh, right. Oh, well, I suppose he had his head screwed on. But of course, Kevin Keegan was from Doncaster, wasn't it?
I think Scunthorpe, I think.
Scunthorpe, was it? Okay, fair enough.
Doncaster.
Yeah, it's that area anyway.
His roots are firmly in the Northeast, with his, same as me. He's sitting on his granddad's knee being told stories about the offside rule and being changed because Newcastle United's fullbacks and the legend of Gallagher.
It was probably one of the best strikers we've seen in the country. So, I mean, he had his day, but many of the kids nowadays they might have heard of him, but they won't remember him playing particularly. So, but yeah. Anyway, we've gone off the subject a little bit, Kevin. And so today with Angie Colee, it's been an absolute first-class podcast. Today I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.